The morning alarm screamed across mining station Kepler 442b like the cry of a dying animal. Taemin rolled off his thin metal bunk and rubbed his tired eyes. Around him, 60 other human workers were doing the same thing. They moved like ghosts, in the dim blue light that passed for dawn on this frozen rock of a planet. Taemin had been the foreman here for 2 years now. Every day started the same way. Every day ended with someone hurt or dead or broken. The orange dragon made sure of that. "Another beautiful day in paradise," Jiwoo said from the next bunk. She was small, but tough as steel cables. Her job was setting off explosions to break through the rock walls deep in the mines. The scars on her hands told the story of 3 years working with dangerous chemicals and unstable rock. "Keep your voice down," Taemin warned. "You know he has listening devices everywhere." The he was Vraktor, the orange-scaled nightmare that ruled their lives. 10 feet tall with claws that could slice through metal and amber eyes that seemed to burn with hatred for every human on the station. For 3 years, he had made their lives a living hell. Subin was already up and checking the mining equipment. She was the chief engineer and one of the smartest people Taemin had ever met. But even she looked tired and beaten down. The constant fear of making a mistake that would bring Vraktor's anger down on them all was wearing everyone thin. "The Tunnel 7 supports are getting weak," Subin said quietly. "We need new support beams or that whole section could come down." "Did you file a request?" Taemin asked. 3 times. No response. "You know how it is." Taemin knew exactly how it was. Vraktor did not care if humans lived or died. To him, they were just numbers on a production report. When someone died, he would simply order replacement workers from the prison ships that brought fresh bodies every month. The workers shuffled toward the eating hall for their morning meal. The food was gray paste that tasted like metal and chemicals. But it kept them alive, and that was all the Galactic Mining Consortium cared about. Alive and working until they dropped. Hyejin sat down next to Taemin with her food tray. She was the medical officer, but there was only so much she could do with limited supplies and no real equipment. Mostly she patched up cuts and tried to keep people working when they should have been in a hospital. "Lost another one last night," she said, in a voice barely above a whisper. "Who?" "Young-ho. The kid from Tunnel 12. Lung infection finally got him. He was only 19. Taemin felt the familiar weight settle on his chest. Another death he could have prevented if they had better air filters or proper medical supplies. Another family back on Earth who would get a form letter saying their son died in an industrial accident. "We need to request better air recycling systems," Hyejin continued. "I have requested them 15 times in the past year. The response is always the same. Current systems are adequate for operational requirements." That was Vraktor's favorite phrase. Adequate for operational requirements. It did not matter if people were dying from poisoned air or cave-ins or equipment failures. As long as the mining quotas were met, everything was adequate. The eating hall fell silent as heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Everyone knew that sound. Metal boots on metal floor plates. The sound of their orange-scaled master, coming to deliver the daily orders. Vraktor entered the hall, and every human worker looked down at their food. Nobody wanted to make eye contact with those burning amber eyes. The alien stood 10 feet tall, and his orange scales seemed to glow. With their own inner light, his claws clicked against the metal door frame as he gripped it. He never spoke directly to them. Never. All communication came through the electronic message system or through the security speakers mounted on every wall. His voice was deep and cold when it came through those speakers. "Attention, human workers. Production quotas for yesterday were 12% below acceptable levels. This is unacceptable. Shifts will be extended by 2 hours until quotas are met. Food rations will be reduced by 15% until efficiency improves. Work begins in 10 minutes. Vraktor's amber eyes swept across the room once. Taemin caught a glimpse of that burning gaze and felt his blood freeze. There was nothing there, no emotion, no recognition that he was looking at living beings. Just cold calculation, like someone looking at broken machinery. The alien turned and walked away. His heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor until they faded into silence. "I hate him," Jiwoo whispered. "I hate everything about him. His ugly orange hide, those dead eyes, the way he looks at us like we are insects." "We all hate him," Subin said. "But hating him will not keep us alive. Only staying. Invisible and meeting quotas will do that." "For how long?" asked Dong-hyun. He was a young father with 2 children back on Earth. "How long do we keep living like slaves just to stay breathing?" "As long as it takes," Taemin answered. "The consortium has contracts with Earth government. We work our terms or our families pay the penalty. You know this. They all knew this. The human governments had sold mining rights and labor contracts to the Galactic Mining Consortium in exchange for advanced technology. Every worker on the station was serving a 5-year contract, but the death rate meant most never made it home. "Sometimes I wonder what he thinks about," Hyojin said quietly. "Who?" "The dragon. Vraktor. Does he have a family somewhere? Does he dream? Does he ever feel anything at all?" "Dragons do not feel," Jiwoo said with bitterness. "Everyone knows that. They evolved past emotions millions of years ago. That is what makes them perfect overseers. No mercy, no compassion, no weakness." "Maybe that is what makes them monsters," Dong-hyun said. The work alarm sounded and 60 humans stood up from their tables. Another day in the mines began. Another day of hoping the tunnels would not collapse. Another day of hoping Vraktor would not decide to make an example of someone. Taemin watched his people file out toward the mining tunnels. Good people. Brave people. People who deserved better than to die in darkness millions of miles from home just to make the consortium rich. He looked up at the security camera mounted above the eating hall entrance. Somewhere behind that camera, Vraktor was watching. Always watching. The orange dragon who held all their lives in his clawed hands, and seemed to care nothing for any of them. Another day in hell was about to begin. 3 weeks passed like a slow nightmare. The extended shifts and reduced food rations were taking their toll on everyone. Dark circles ringed every eye and hands shook from exhaustion. But the quotas were being met, and that was all Vraktor seemed to care about. Taemin was inspecting Tunnel 7 when the ground started to shake. At first he thought it was just another controlled explosion from Jiwoo's team in the deeper sections. But the rumbling kept getting stronger, and the support beams Subin had warned about began to groan under the strain. "Everyone out," Taemin shouted. "Move now!" The workers in Tunnel 7 began running toward the exit, but the shaking was getting worse and chunks of rock were starting to fall from the ceiling. Taemin counted heads as people ran past him. 58, 59. Where was 60? "Dong-hyun!" he called out. "Where is Dong-hyun?" "Still inside," someone yelled back. "He went deeper to check the new drilling site." The tunnel was collapsing. The old support beams that should have been replaced months ago were snapping like twigs. A wall of rock and metal came crashing down, blocking the main entrance. Dong-hyun and 11 other workers were trapped on the wrong side. "Get emergency equipment," Taemin ordered. "Cutting tools. Anything that can move rock." Now, Subin was already running toward the equipment shed. Jiwoo grabbed her emergency explosive kit. Within minutes, the entire crew was working to clear the entrance, but it would take hours, maybe days, to dig through all that rock. "We need heavy equipment," Subin said, breathing hard from moving debris. "The kind only he can authorize." Everyone knew who she meant. Vraktor controlled all the heavy mining equipment on the station, the plasma cutters and rock movers that could clear this mess in a few hours instead of days. But getting his approval meant going to the command center and facing those burning amber eyes. "I will go," Taemin said. Taemin, no. Hyejin grabbed his arm. You know how he is about production delays. He might decide we are all expendable. 12 people are trapped in there. Donghyun has 2 kids back home. I will not leave them to die. Taemin walked through the station corridors toward the command center. His boots echoed in the empty hallways, and every step felt like walking toward his own execution. Nobody went to see Vraktor unless they were summoned. Nobody disturbed the Orange Dragon unless they wanted to face his anger. The command center. Doors were 10 feet tall and made of black metal. Taemin pressed the communication button and waited. A mechanical voice answered, "State your business, human worker." Foreman Taemin requesting emergency meeting with Overseer Vraktor. We have a tunnel collapse with trapped workers. Wait! Minutes passed. Taemin could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. Finally, the massive doors slid open with a hiss of pressurized air. The command center was huge and dark. Banks of monitors showed every tunnel and corridor on the station, and there in the center of it all stood Vraktor, 10 feet of orange scales, and burning eyes focused on dozens of data screens at once. He did not turn around when Taemin entered. Tunnel 7 has experienced structural failure, the alien said in his deep, cold voice. 12 workers are trapped. You want me to authorize heavy equipment for rescue operations? Yes, sir. We can have them out in a few hours with plasma cutters. And denied. The word hit Taemin like a physical blow. Sir, rescue operations would require shutting down mining in sectors 4 through 9. Production loss would be significant. More efficient to write off the trapped workers and request replacements from the next transport. They are people, Taemin said before he could stop himself. Now Vraktor turned around. Those amber eyes focused on Taemin with an intensity that made his knees shake. The alien took a step forward, and his claws clicked on the metal floor. They are numbers on a productivity report, Vraktor said. Replaceable resources, nothing more. Donghyun has children. A wife. He is 24 years old with his whole life ahead of him. Irrelevant. How can you say that? Taemin's voice was rising despite his fear. How can you look at living beings and see nothing but numbers? Vraktor moved closer. He towered over. Taemin like a mountain of orange scales and barely controlled power. His amber eyes seemed to burn brighter, and for a moment something flickered across them. Something that might have been recognition or pain or memory. But it was gone in an instant. The consortium's profit margins are non-negotiable, Vraktor said. Production schedules must be maintained. Return to your duties. I will not abandon my people. You will follow orders or join them in that tunnel. The threat hung in the air between them. Taemin stared up into those burning eyes and saw nothing but cold calculation. No mercy, no compassion, no recognition that 12 human lives were slowly dying in the darkness below. Please, Taemin said quietly. I am begging you. They are good workers. They have families waiting for them. Just authorize the equipment. For a few hours. Something flickered in Vraktor's eyes again. This time it lasted longer. The alien's massive head tilted slightly, as if he was listening to something only he could hear. His claws flexed and unflexed at his sides. The answer is no, he said finally. Dismissed. Taemin turned and walked back toward the doors. But as they slid shut behind him, he heard something that made his blood freeze. It was very quiet, but unmistakable. The sound of claws scraping against metal. Not with anger, but with something that might have been frustration or conflict. He ran back to Tunnel 7, where his crew was still digging with hand tools and desperation. Their faces were dirty and exhausted, but they had not given up hope. What did he say? Subin asked. He said no heavy equipment. We are on our own. The workers looked at each other with expressions of rage and disbelief. They had known Vraktor was cold, but this level of cruelty shocked even them. Then we do it ourselves, Jiwoo said grimly. We dig until our hands bleed. We work around the clock. We do not abandon our friends. That could take days, Hyojin said. They might not have that long. Then we work faster, Taemin said. We save them or die trying. Back in the command center, Vraktor stood alone, surrounded by his monitors and data screens. His amber eyes stared at the display showing Tunnel 7 where 48 humans were digging desperately to save their trapped friends. His massive claws gripped the edge of a control console. The metal began to bend under the pressure, but he did not seem to notice. On the screens, the humans kept digging. Hour after hour, never giving up, never abandoning hope. Something was stirring in the orange dragon's chest, something he thought he had left behind long ago when he accepted this position. Something dangerous and forbidden and completely against everything his species believed in, something that felt very much like guilt. The digging had been going on for 18 hours. Hands were bleeding and backs ached, but nobody stopped working. They had managed to clear about half the debris blocking Tunnel 7, but it was slow work with only hand tools and the trapped workers were running out of air. Yoonji was monitoring communications from her small station near the main corridor. She handled all the data transmissions between the mining station and consortium headquarters. Most of it was boring production, reports and supply requests, but tonight she found something that made her blood run cold. Taemin, she called quietly. You need to see this. Taemin looked up from the pile of rocks he was moving. His hands were cut and his back felt like it was on fire. But Yoonji's voice had an urgency that made him pay attention. What is it? I was reviewing the medical supply records for my monthly report. Look at this. She showed him her data pad. According to official records, we should have run out of antibiotics 3 months ago. But we still have them. Same with pain medication and surgical supplies. Maybe there was an error in the inventory. That is what I thought. So I checked deeper. Look at these shipping manifests. Her fingers moved across the screen, showing him document after document. Someone has been ordering extra medical supplies and having them delivered to storage areas that do not officially exist. Taemin stared at the numbers. Hundreds of units of medicine that should not be there. Enough to keep people alive who would have died without treatment. Who has authorization to order supplies like this? Only one person on this station, Yoonji said. Vraktor. The words hung in the air like a puzzle piece that did not fit. Why would the orange dragon who seemed to care nothing for human life be secretly providing them with medical supplies? It made no sense. There is more, Yoonji continued. She pulled up another file. Production reports. I cross-referenced what we actually mined versus what got reported to headquarters. Someone has been inflating our numbers by 12% for the past year. Inflating them how? Making it look like we are meeting quotas even when we fall short. Covering for equipment failures and sick days. Making sure nobody gets punished for missing targets. Taemin felt his worldview shifting. Every time they had failed to meet impossible deadlines, he had expected punishment that never came. Every time someone was too sick to work, he had feared retaliation from Vraktor. But the Orange Dragon had been protecting them in secret. Why would he do this? I do not know. But there is something else you need to hear. Young-soo was an older miner who had been on the station longer than anyone. He was 62 years old and had seen more death and suffering than any person should. When Yoonji called him over, his weathered face was grim. Tell him what you told me, Yoonji said. Young-soo looked around to make sure nobody else was listening. It was about 6 months ago. I was working late shift in Tunnel 12 and got lost trying to find the emergency exit. Ended up in the old abandoned section where nobody goes anymore. And I saw him, Vraktor, just standing there in this empty corridor staring at the wall. At first I thought he was going to kill me for being in a restricted area, but he did not even notice I was there. What was he looking at? Names. Hundreds of names carved into the metal wall. Every human who has died on this station in the past 3 years. All of them. Even the ones who died in accidents that were not reported to headquarters. Taemin felt his breath catch. He made a memorial. That is not the strangest part. He was just standing there looking at all those names. His whole body was shaking like he was in pain. I watched him for 2 hours and he never moved, just stared at those names like they were burning holes in his eyes. The revelation hit Tae-min like a physical blow. Vraktor had been carrying the weight of every human death on his conscience. All this time they had thought he saw them as expendable numbers, when in reality he was grieving for every life lost. But why? Tae-min asked. Why hide it? Why pretend? He does not care. Maybe because caring is forbidden, Yoonji suggested. Everyone knows the Draconians evolved past emotions. Maybe showing compassion would get him in trouble with his own people. A new sound echoed through the tunnels, heavy scraping and grinding like massive machinery moving rock. Everyone stopped working and listened. It was coming from the direction of Tunnel 7. They ran toward the collapse site and found something impossible. Massive claws were tearing through the debris from the other side. Orange scales flashed in the emergency lighting as a 10-foot-tall figure worked to clear the blockage. Vraktor was there, and he was not trying to stop the rescue. He was leading it. His claws moved through solid rock like it was soft clay. Boulders. That would take 6 humans to move. He lifted with one hand. In minutes, he had cleared more debris than they had managed in 18 hours of desperate digging. "Stand back," his deep voice commanded. "The remaining structure is unstable." The humans moved away and watched in amazement as Vraktor carved a tunnel through the collapsed section. His amber eyes burned with focused intensity, and his movements were precise and careful. This was not the cold, calculating overseer they knew. This was someone desperately trying to save lives. Within an hour, he had opened a passage large enough for people to crawl through. One by one, the trapped workers emerged from Tunnel 7. They were dirty and exhausted and scared, but they were alive. All 12 of them, including Dong-hyun. As the last worker climbed out of the rescue tunnel, Dong-hyun looked up at Vraktor with tears in his eyes. "Thank you," he said simply. The orange dragon stared down at the young father for a long moment. His amber eyes seemed to flicker with emotions nobody thought his species could feel. "You should not have been in danger," Vraktor said quietly. "The support beams should have been replaced months ago. The failure was mine. But you saved us. I should have saved you sooner." Tae-min stepped forward. For the first time, he was looking at Vraktor not with fear, but with something approaching understanding. "Why?" he asked. "Why did you refuse to authorize the rescue equipment if you were planning to help all along?" Vraktor's massive head turned toward him. Those burning amber eyes met his, and for a moment the alien's carefully constructed mask seemed to slip. Because the security cameras in the command center report directly to consortium headquarters. If they had seen me authorize a rescue operation that reduced productivity, they would have replaced me with someone less sympathetic to human welfare. So you came here yourself. The abandoned sections have no surveillance. What happens here will not be reported." The workers stared at their orange-scaled overseer with new eyes. The monster they had feared and hated for 3 years was risking his own position to save their lives. And he had been doing it all along in ways they never knew. "Your species calls it compassion," Vraktor continued. "Mine was supposed to have evolved past such weakness. But watching your people die while pretending not to care has been the hardest thing I have ever done." The tunnel fell silent except for the sound of heavy breathing and dripping water. 12 humans who had been prepared to die were now alive. And the alien they thought was their greatest enemy had revealed himself to be their secret protector. Everything they thought they knew was wrong. The rescue changed everything. Word spread through the human workers like electricity through metal. Vraktor had saved 12 lives while risking his own position. The orange dragon they had feared was not their enemy after all. But there was a problem. The main tunnel was still partially blocked, and the air circulation system had been damaged in the collapse. The trapped section needed constant monitoring, and someone had to stay behind to make sure the remaining supports did not fail. "I will coordinate the stabilization work," Subin volunteered. "We need to shore up the damaged supports before anyone else gets hurt." "It is too dangerous for humans alone," Vraktor said. His deep voice echoed in the narrow tunnel. "The rock formation is unstable. One wrong move could bring down the entire section." "Then what do you suggest?" Taman asked. "We work together. Your knowledge of human safety requirements combined with my strength and geological sensing abilities, it is the only way to make this area secure." The idea was radical. Humans and Draconians working side by side as equals. It had never been done before. The Galactic Mining Consortium kept strict separation between species, with aliens always in command positions and humans doing manual labor. But they had no choice. The tunnel could collapse again at any moment, and they could not evacuate the entire section without falling behind on production quotas. That would bring unwanted attention from headquarters. The work began immediately. Vraktor's claws could sense stress fractures in the rock that human instruments missed. He would point to a weak spot, and Subin would calculate the exact placement and size of support beam needed. Jiwoo provided shaped charges to relieve pressure in critical areas, while Sujin monitored air quality and structural integrity. It was delicate work that required perfect coordination. One mistake could kill them all. But as the hours passed, something remarkable happened. The fear and suspicion that had divided humans and dragon began to fade away. "Hand me that plasma welder," Vraktor said to Hyun-woo. 6 months ago, the idea of an alien giving orders to a human would have caused anger and resentment. But now, Hyun-woo simply passed the tool and helped guide the alien's massive claws to make precise welds in tight spaces. "Your people have interesting ways of solving problems," Vraktor observed as he watched Chan-woo jury-rig a pressure sensor from spare parts. "We call it making do with what we have," Chan-woo replied. "Humans are good at improvising when we do not have proper equipment. It is more than improvisation. It is creativity. My species lost that ability long ago when we eliminated emotional thinking. We can follow procedures and calculate optimal solutions, but we cannot imagine new possibilities the way you do." "Maybe that is why you need us," Nari suggested. "And maybe we need your strength and knowledge. Together we can do things neither species could manage alone." During the 12-hour stabilization operation, something extraordinary took place. Barriers that had existed for 3 years simply dissolved. Vraktor learned the names of every human worker, not from personnel files, but by asking them directly and remembering what they told him. Woojin had a daughter who wanted to be a doctor. Gunho collected ancient Earth music and dreamed of opening a recording studio when his contract ended. Mi Young wrote poetry in her spare time and kept a secret journal of daily life on the mining station. In return, Vraktor shared details of his own life that shocked the humans. He had not chosen to become an overseer. His family had been killed in a mining accident on another world, and he had requested assignment to dangerous postings as a form of self-punishment. "I thought if I could save other workers, it might balance the scales for failing to save my own people," he admitted to Shung-ho as they worked to install a critical support beam. "But you have saved us, over and over. All the medical supplies and false reports and protection from punishment. You kept us alive when regulations would have let us die." It was not enough. "Every death on this station feels like losing my family again." Dalnim looked up from the stress monitoring equipment she was calibrating. "Maybe the problem is not that you failed to save everyone. Maybe the problem is a system that makes saving people so hard. The consortium has operated this way for centuries. It is efficient and profitable." "Efficient for who?" Yejin asked. "Not for the workers who die in preventable accidents. Not for the families who lose fathers and mothers and children." Vraktor was quiet for a long moment. His amber eyes seemed to be processing concepts his species had abandoned long ago. Ideas about justice and fairness and the value of individual lives. "What would you change?" he asked finally. "Everything," Taemin said. "Better equipment, proper safety protocols, medical care that actually keeps people healthy instead of just patching them up to work another day. Fair wages," added Sang-min. "Reasonable hours," said Bo-Ra. "Respect," said Jin-Ho. "Being treated like intelligent beings instead of expendable machinery." The consortium would never approve such changes. It would reduce profits and efficiency, ratings. "Then maybe the consortium needs to change too," Aerie suggested. "Or maybe they need to be shown a better way." As they worked through the night, the impossible alliance grew stronger. Vraktor's strength moved obstacles that would have taken humans days to clear. Human ingenuity found solutions to problems that would have stumped purely logical thinking. Together, they accomplished what neither species could have managed alone. By dawn, the tunnel was not only stable but safer than it had ever been. New support systems designed by Subin and installed with Vraktor's precision were rated to handle twice the stress of the original construction. "We did good work," Kyung-soo said as they surveyed the completed repairs. "Better than good," Hai-Wan agreed. "This tunnel will be the safest section on the entire station." Vraktor nodded slowly. For the first time since the humans had known him, his posture seemed relaxed instead of rigid with constant tension. "Working with your people has taught me something important," he said. "Efficiency and productivity are meaningless if they come at the cost of lives that could have been saved. Perhaps it is time to find a better balance." "What do you mean?" Taemin asked. "I mean the old ways are not working, not for humans and not for me. Perhaps it is time to try something different." But before anyone could ask what he meant, the station alarm began blaring. Red lights flashed in the corridors, and the mechanical voice of the central computer echoed through the tunnels. "Attention all personnel, consortium inspection team arriving. In 6 hours, all workers report to designated positions immediately. Full compliance review in progress." The humans looked at each other with expressions of panic. Consortium inspections meant reviewing every report and production record. They would discover the false numbers and hidden medical supplies. They would see the unauthorized rescue operation and the alliance between human and dragon, and they would punish everyone involved. "They cannot find out about any of this," Yunji said urgently. "If headquarters discovers you have been protecting us, they will remove you and install someone who follows regulations exactly." "And what happens to us?" Dong-hyun asked quietly. Nobody answered because they all knew. The replacement overseer would treat humans exactly as the regulations required, as expendable resources to be used until they died and then replaced. The progress they had made would be lost. All the lives Vraktor had saved would become meaningless, unless they found a way to hide the truth from the inspection team, or unless they found the courage to face the consequences together. The consortium inspection team arrived exactly on schedule. 3 ships landed on the station platform carrying officials who looked like they had never seen a mining tunnel in their lives. They wore clean uniforms and carried data pads that would record every violation of regulations they could find. The lead inspector was a tall, thin alien with gray skin and cold blue eyes. His name was Director Keth, and he had shut down 12 mining operations in the past year for efficiency violations. He walked through the station corridors like he was looking for problems to solve by eliminating the people who caused them. "Overseer Vraktor," Director Keth said in a voice that sounded like breaking glass. "Your production reports show some interesting patterns. We are here to verify their accuracy." Vraktor stood at attention in the command center. His orange scales seemed less bright than usual, and his amber eyes were carefully controlled. "All reports are accurate according to standard measurement protocols. We shall see. I want to examine your medical supply records first." There are discrepancies between what you ordered and what should have been consumed based on reported injury rates. Yunji sat at her communications station trying to look invisible. All the evidence of Vraktor's secret protection was stored in her files. One deep search of the medical database would reveal everything. Perhaps there was an error in the automated reporting system, Vraktor suggested. Perhaps. Or perhaps you have been providing unauthorized medical care to expendable workers. Such wasteful compassion is exactly the kind of inefficiency the consortium seeks to eliminate. The inspection continued for hours. Director Keth examined every file and questioned every number. He interviewed human workers and recorded their answers on his datapad. His questions were designed to find evidence of unauthorized cooperation between species. Worker Taemin, he said, has Overseer Vraktor ever spoken to you directly outside of official channels? No, sir, Taemin lied. All communication follows proper protocols. Has he ever provided medical supplies or equipment not authorized by regulations? Not to my knowledge, sir. But the lies were getting harder to maintain. Director Keth was experienced at finding hidden violations. He examined the tunnel's 7 repair work and noticed the quality was far beyond minimum standards. Overseer Vraktor. Why was so much time and material invested in repairing this section? Regulations require only basic safety compliance. The geological conditions required additional reinforcement to prevent future collapses. Show me the geological survey that justified this expense. There was no survey. Vraktor had made the repairs based on his own judgment and desire to keep the workers safe. But he could not admit that without revealing his emotional involvement in human welfare. The survey data is still being processed, he said carefully. Then you performed unauthorized construction work based on personal judgment rather than approved analysis. This is a serious violation. Director Keth made notes on his datapad and continued his inspection. By the end of the day, he had found enough irregularities to justify removing Vraktor from his position and implementing strict punishment protocols for the human workers. Overseer Vraktor, he announced in the main corridor where all the workers could hear. You have violated consortium efficiency standards in multiple areas. You are relieved of duty and will be transported to headquarters for reconditioning. The word reconditioning hit the humans like a physical blow. They had learned what it meant from other stations. It was a procedure that removed emotional capacity from alien overseers who showed too much concern for worker welfare. Vraktor would return as a cold, efficient administrator with no memory of ever caring about human lives. Furthermore, Director Keth continued, all human workers on this station will be transferred to punishment facilities for re-education. Your contamination by unauthorized alien sympathy requires correction. Punishment facilities were death sentences. They were mining operations where safety regulations did not exist and worker survival was measured in weeks instead of years. Director Keth? Taemin stepped forward. The violations were not Overseer Vraktor's fault. We forced him to help us through work slowdowns and equipment sabotage. It was a desperate lie, but Taemin hoped to shift blame away from the alien who had protected them. Irrelevant, Director Keth replied. A proper overseer would have eliminated rebellious workers rather than accommodating their demands. His failure to maintain discipline proves emotional contamination. What if there was another way, Subin suggested. What if we could prove that cooperation between species actually improves productivity instead of reducing it? Impossible. Emotional attachment always leads to inefficiency. The data is conclusive. Then let us show you different data, Vraktor said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. His amber eyes were burning with something that might have been determination or desperation. What do you mean? Director Keth demanded. Give us 1 month to prove that cooperation can increase efficiency. If we fail, you can proceed with reconditioning and transfers. If we succeed, you report our results to consortium leadership as a new operational model. Ridiculous. Draconians do not negotiate with expendable resources. I am not negotiating. I am offering to demonstrate superior productivity through innovative management techniques. Surely the consortium values results over ideology." Director Keth was quiet for a long moment. His cold blue eyes calculated risks and benefits with mechanical precision. "Very well, 1 month. But if productivity drops even 1% below current levels, the consequences will be severe. For everyone." After the inspection team left, the station fell into worried silence. They had bought time, but at a terrible cost. One mistake and they would all pay the price for daring to care about each other across species lines. "What have we done?" Jiwoo whispered. "How can we possibly meet increased productivity quotas while maintaining safety standards?" "We find a way," Taemin said firmly. "We work together like we did in Tunnel 7. Humans and Vraktor as partners, instead of master and slaves. The risk is enormous," Hyojin pointed out. "If we fail, they will not just recondition Vraktor. They will make an example of this entire station to prevent other facilities from attempting cooperation." "Then we do not fail," Vraktor said. His deep voice carried new determination. "For 3 years I have watched your people die while pretending not to care. I will not let that happen again." "What are you saying?" "I am saying it is time to stop hiding. Time to stop pretending that efficiency matters more than lives. If the consortium wants to see what humans and draconians can accomplish together, we will show them." "That could mean rebellion," Young-soo said quietly. "Open defiance of everything the consortium stands for." "Yes," Vraktor replied. "It could." The workers looked at each other with expressions of fear and hope and desperate courage. They had spent years surviving under an oppressive system that treated them as expendable machinery. Now they had a chance to prove they were something more. But the cost of failure would be measured in lives, and success might be even more dangerous than failure. Because if they succeeded in showing that cooperation between species was possible, they would threaten the foundation of everything the Galactic Mining Consortium had built its power on. And powerful organizations did not give up that power without a fight. The month that followed was like nothing anyone had ever experienced on mining station Kepler 442b. Humans and Vraktor worked together not as master and servants, but as equals with a shared purpose. The results were extraordinary. Productivity increased by 30% in the first week alone. Vraktor's geological knowledge helped identify rich ore deposits that human surveys had missed. Human creativity found ways to extract those deposits safely and efficiently, using techniques no draconian had ever imagined. Subin designed new tunnel support systems that were both stronger and cheaper than regulation standards. Jiwoo developed precision blasting techniques that increased ore recovery while reducing structural damage. The entire operation transformed into something that looked more like a partnership than a mining facility, but it was the safety improvements that really made the difference. Working together, they eliminated the accidents and equipment failures that had plagued the station for years. For the first time since the humans had arrived, nobody died in the mines. "Look at these numbers," Yoonji said excitedly. She was reviewing the monthly reports that would be sent to consortium headquarters. 0 fatalities, 15% reduction in equipment maintenance costs, production targets exceeded by 28%. "Will it be enough?" Hyojin asked. "It has to be," Taemin replied. "We have proven that cooperation works better than oppression. Even the consortium cannot argue with results like these." But they all knew the real test would come when Director Keth returned for his evaluation. The gray-skinned inspector had made it clear that he expected them to fail. Discovering their success would force him to question everything the consortium believed about efficient management. The inspection team arrived on schedule exactly 1 month after their ultimatum. Director Keth emerged from his ship wearing the same cold expression and carrying the same datapad that had nearly destroyed them before. "Overseer Vraktor," he announced. I am here to review your productivity results and proceed with reconditioning procedures. Director Keth, Vraktor replied formally. I am here to present evidence that cooperative management produces superior results to traditional separation protocols. They gathered in the main assembly area where all 60 human workers could witness what happened next. Director Keth reviewed the monthly reports on his datapad, and his cold blue eyes grew wider with each number he read. These figures cannot be accurate, he said finally. No mining facility has ever achieved this level of productivity while maintaining zero casualty rates. The figures are accurate, Vraktor stated. Would you like to tour the facility and verify them personally? The tour lasted 6 hours. Director Keth examined every tunnel and questioned every worker. He reviewed equipment logs and medical records and safety reports. But no matter how hard he searched, he could not find evidence of fraud or manipulation. The improvements were real. Humans and Draconian working together had accomplished something neither species could have achieved alone. How? Director Keth demanded when the tour was complete. By recognizing that different species have different strengths, Foreman explained. Draconians have superior physical abilities and geological sensing. Humans have creativity and problem-solving skills. Together, we can overcome limitations that would defeat either species individually. This violates fundamental principles of efficient management. Emotional attachment between species always leads to decreased productivity. Does it? Subin challenged. Or does mutual respect lead to increased motivation and better cooperation? Director Keth was quiet for a long moment. His mechanical mind was processing data that contradicted everything he had been taught about proper management techniques. Even if your results are sustainable, he said finally, the consortium will never accept such radical changes to operational doctrine. The established order exists for good reasons. What reasons? Jiwoo asked. Keeping different species afraid of each other. Making sure nobody questions why a few administrators get rich while workers die in preventable accidents. The system maintains stability and control. The system maintains injustice, Dong-hyun said quietly. I have 2 children back on Earth who deserve a father who comes home alive. Every worker here has family waiting for them. We are not expendable. Resources. We are people. Draconians do not form emotional attachments to other species. This Draconian does, Vraktor said simply. The words hung in the air like a challenge to everything the Galactic Mining Consortium represented. A Draconian overseer openly admitting emotional attachment to human workers. It was unprecedented and dangerous and completely contrary to established doctrine. Director Keth stared at Vraktor with something approaching shock. You are confirming emotional contamination. This justifies immediate reconditioning. I am confirming that caring about the people under my command makes me a better leader. The results speak for themselves. The consortium does not care about individual results. It cares about systematic control. Then maybe it is time for the consortium to evolve, Foreman said. At that moment, something extraordinary happened. News crews from 3 different galactic networks arrived at the station unannounced. Someone had leaked the story of the unprecedented cooperation between humans and Draconians at mining station Kepler 442b. Director Keth, the lead reporter announced, we are here to document the revolutionary management techniques that have produced record productivity gains. Can you comment on plans to implement similar programs at other facilities? Director Keth looked like he had been trapped in a nightmare. The last thing the consortium wanted was public attention focused on worker conditions and management policies. There are no revolutionary techniques, he said stiffly. This facility operates according to standard protocols. But our sources indicate that Overseer Vraktor and Foreman Foreman have developed an unprecedented partnership that has eliminated worker casualties while increasing production by nearly 30%. The cameras were rolling and broadcasting live across the galaxy. Millions of beings on thousands of worlds were watching to see how the consortium would respond to evidence that cooperation worked better than oppression. "Is it true that you were ordered to undergo reconditioning for protecting human workers?" another reporter asked Vractor. "It is true," the orange dragon replied. His amber eyes burned with quiet dignity as he faced the cameras. "But I do not regret my actions. These humans are not expendable resources. They are intelligent beings who deserve respect and protection." "Foreman." "Taemin," a third reporter called out, "how has working with a draconian partner changed conditions for human workers?" "It has saved lives," Taemin answered simply. "For the first time in 3 years, nobody has died in these mines. That is worth more than any production quota." The reporters pressed closer, sensing that they were witnessing something historic. A draconian and human openly declaring their partnership in defiance of consortium policy. It was the kind of story that could change how the galaxy thought about interspecies cooperation. "We understand that you two developed this partnership despite significant risks," the lead reporter continued. "Can you show our viewers the nature of your working relationship?" Taemin and Vractor looked at each other. In that moment, they both understood that whatever they did next would be seen by billions of beings across the galaxy. It could inspire change, or it could bring terrible retribution from those who profited from the current system, but they had come too far to back down now. Taemin stepped forward and extended his hand toward Vractor. The orange dragon looked down at the small, human hand being offered to him. His massive claws could crush those fingers without effort, but instead he carefully took Taemin's hand in his own, and they shook hands as equals and partners. The image burned across the galaxy in seconds. A human foreman and draconian overseer shaking hands in friendship and mutual respect. It challenged every assumption about the natural order between species and the necessity of maintaining separation through fear. The handshake lasted only a few seconds, but its impact was immediate. On mining stations and agricultural colonies and manufacturing centers across the galaxy, workers saw that cooperation was possible. They saw that the powerful could choose compassion over control, and they began to demand the same changes for themselves. Director Keth watched his career and his worldview crumble in real time. The consortium would never forgive him for allowing this public demonstration of successful cooperation. But he was no longer sure the consortium deserved to be forgiven. 6 months later, mining station Kepler 442b had become the most famous workplace in the galaxy. Delegations arrived daily to study the partnership model that Taemin and Vractor had developed. Worker safety regulations were rewritten across dozens of worlds, and the casualty rates at mining facilities dropped by 60% in the first year. The Galactic Mining Consortium fought the changes, but public opinion had shifted too far for them to resist. The handshake had become a symbol of what was possible when different species worked together as equals instead of masters and servants.